large number of ballistic missiles and drones towards Israel. How will this impact the ongoing war? We'll of course continue to explore this and get you all the details on this.
And while the Houthis have gotten involved and announced their involvement in the war, Israel has shown no signs of slowing down its onslaught on Gaza. In the latest, Israeli airstrikes hit a densely populated refugee camp in the Gaza Strip, killing at least 50 Palestinians. Israel claims they also executed a Hamas commander in the strike. Now, while we track all the developments of the ongoing war, let's take a look at the global developments as well. Welcome once again to World DNA. Let's get started with the headlines.
Yemen's Houthis launch a barrage of ballistic and winged missiles and large number of drones at multiple Israeli targets.
Bolivia's government breaks diplomatic ties with Israel, accusing the latter of committing crimes against humanity in its attacks on Gaza Strip.
White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby says 66 aid trucks have entered Gaza in the last 24 hours and dozens more expected to follow in the coming hours. Reiterates no indication that Hamas is diverting funds.
US President Joe Biden's support for Israel angers Arab American voters. New survey reveals 42% dip in Arab American support for Biden's re-election pitch.
Elite Kenyan police unit goes on trial on charges of wrongful death in killing of Pakistani journalist Arshad Sharif in Nairobi on the 23rd of October 2022.
Pakistan returned to winning ways at the ODI World Cup. The 1992 champions thrashed Bangladesh by 7 wickets to snap a 4-game losing streak. But it is curtains for the Bangla Tigers this time in this edition.
Now, as Israel expanded its ground offensive in Gaza, intense fighting is continuing. Israeli strikes have now targeted refugee camps.
Now, this latest move threatens to derail the ongoing hostage release talks, and this as the war is now expanding well beyond Israel's borders.
Now, let's begin with what's happening on ground first. In the latest, Israel, it is confirmed that it attacked a densely populated refugee camp in North Gaza. It's called the Jabalia refugee camp. Palestinian health officials say that at least 50 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli strikes on the camp.
Now, these visuals on your screens show the scale of the devastation caused in the aftermath of the attack. Israel army says it secured a central Hamas stronghold in the refugee camp airstrike, and the IDF has announced that its fighter jets eliminated commander of Hamas Central Jabalia battalion. Now, who they say was one of the leaders responsible for the deadly terror attack on October 7th.
Intense fighting has taken place in Gaza in the last 24 hours. This as Israel continues to pound Gaza relentlessly as it has sent its ground forces into the enclave. Israel says its troops have hit anti-tank missile launching cells and observation posts, seizing many guns and explosives and killing dozens of militants.
Now, Hamas armed wing said it had ambushed troops in northern Gaza, with its fighters having opened fire on 3 Israeli military vehicles. The Israeli army later said 2 of its soldiers were killed during combat operations in northern Gaza.
Moving on to the hostage situation now, the military wing of Hamas says that the group plans to release some non-Israeli hostages they've been holding in the coming days. In a video statement, the group announced that the release had been arranged through mediation by some nations. Though these nations were not named, Hamas also did not reveal how many hostages would be freed, but said that the group no longer had the desire or the need to keep them.
Meanwhile, Qatari Prime Minister has told visiting Thailand Foreign Minister that efforts are on to secure the release of the hostages. However, after the Israeli strike on Gaza's refugee camp, Qatar has warned that Israeli aggression can undermine the talks on hostages.
Meanwhile, the war is expanding beyond the borders. Tensions have been rising on the Israeli border with Lebanon ever since the war began, as the fighting continues with militant group Hezbollah. On Tuesday, Lebanon accused Israel of white phosphorus attacks, over which it said it would file a complaint at the United Nations.
Elsewhere, let's talk about what's happening in Yemen. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels, they said that they attacked Israel on Tuesday again, and they quote-unquote launched a large batch of ballistic missiles, and a large number of armed aircraft were launched at Israel. Now, the Houthi rebels pledge more attacks against Israel if its war on Hamas in Gaza continues.
Shifting our focus to the aid situation then in Gaza, dozens of Egyptian volunteers at the Rafah crossing facilitated the movement of aid trucks into Gaza on Tuesday.
Meanwhile, the White House said that 66 trucks of humanitarian assistance entered Gaza in the last 24 hours and that dozens more are expected to be cleared for deliveries. US acknowledges that the level of truck aid deliveries so far is just a fraction of how much is actually needed in the Gaza Strip. US officials say they would like to reach up to 100 trucks a day.
Meanwhile, the United States is sending an additional 300 troops to West Asia. Pentagon says the troops would be going from the United States but would not be in Israel, and they are intended to support regional deterrence efforts and further bolster US force protection.
In other updates, Bolivia has announced that it is cutting diplomatic ties with Israel as it demands an end to attack in the Gaza Strip. Bolivia accused Israel of committing crimes against humanity and has become the first country to sever ties with Israel over the war with Hamas.
En el marco de su posición principista de respeto a la vida, ha tomado la determinación de romper relaciones diplomáticas con el Estado de Israel en repudio y condena a la agresiva y desproporcionada ofensiva militar israelí que se realiza en la Franja de Gaza y la amenaza de la paz y la seguridad internacionales.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York. Listen in.
The White House on Monday agreed with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that a ceasefire would only play into Hamas's hands. However, the Biden administration in recent days has been warming up to a humanitarian cause, mostly to get aid to Gaza, but also because while the majority of Americans support Israel's right to defend itself and also its war against Hamas, there are deep divisions among Democrats on Capitol Hill, not to mention a drop in Biden's poll numbers among Democrat voters. Less than 20% of Democrat voters now say they'll vote for Biden again in 2024 because of his unwavering support for Israel. The Democrats in Congress are now divided into two camps as well, those that are staunch supporters of Israel and those that are on the left and are vocally pro-Palestinian. It's also important to note that the American public, well, as I mentioned, the majority do support America's support for Israel. The American public is also very impatient when it comes to wars and U.S. involvement. While right now that support is there, it's unclear as the war drags on and the casualties on both sides increase how this sentiment may change. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
Now, viewers, ever since October 7th, there were fears of the Israel-Hamas war becoming a larger regional conflict. But nearly 1 month into the conflict, fears are now becoming a reality. Haim gets you all the details.
Thank you so much, Shivan. Yes, we've been talking about regional conflagration for quite some time now. The situation in West Asia, it is tense to say the least, since Hamas militants attacked Israel on the 7th of October. Israel, it has retaliated with bombing the Gaza Strip as it fights to eliminate the militant group. But as the war approaches the 1 month mark and Yemen's Houthis have started attacking Israel, there are fears that more players from across the region might join the war to fight Israel. Who are these players? Here's all you need to know about this. We're talking about the Axis of Resistance. It's a multi-pronged network of different forces across West Asia, resisting Western powers and Israel. It's an informal, loose-knit alliance that includes both Sunni and Shia Muslim groups. The alliance includes governments in Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, Gaza and Iraq. The group is supported by varying degrees by Iran. The Iranian regime and its Quds force, a subset of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, have grown this network. Interestingly, the term axis of resistance that is believed to have emerged in response to the former American President George W. Bush's use of the term axis of evil. Now, let's take a look at the members of this group as well. The axis includes the Lebanese militant group and Shia political party Hezbollah. Hezbollah operates both as a Shia Muslim political party and militant group. It wields significant power, especially in southern Lebanon, and is active along Israel's northern border. We've been covering that as well, where tensions have been building since the Hamas attacks on the 7th of October. Yemen's Houthi rebels next also come under this axis. They are a formidable part of the axis of resistance. The Houthis have fought a civil war against Yemen's government, which is backed by Saudi Arabia, for nearly a decade. The Houthis have demonstrated their missile and drone capabilities during the Yemen war, and the Houthis have rallied behind the Palestinians since Hamas attacked Israel, again on the 7th of October. Now, the axis also comprises militias in the influential Iran-backed Popular Mobilization Forces in Iraq. It was formed to help fight ISIS in 2014. In the campaign against ISIS, and it took over control of the Iraqi sections of the land bridge in 2017. Moreover, new alliance was dominated from the outset by the militias loyal to Iran. The organization is particularly strong, having emerged from an Iraqi exile unit within the Revolutionary Guard Corps. It has become the most important instrument of the Quds Corps in Iraq today. And as fears are mounting that these forces might join the war in West Asia, Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels have in fact said that they'd attacked Israel on Tuesday. They say a large batch of ballistic missiles and a large number of armed aircraft were fired at Israel. The Houthi rebels have pledged more attacks against Israel if its war on Hamas in Gaza continues, while experts believe that the unity of the fronts of Iranian-backed proxy groups is a kind of NATO for militant groups in the region, who will provide military support should any other member groups face an existential threat here. So that's the latest on the axis of resistance, Shivan.
Thanks, Im. Of course, there's a lot to understand regarding that axis of resistance, which we're essentially seeing backed by Iran. Now, in the latest, Yemen's Houthi rebels, they have officially launched a full-blown attack on Israel, and a move which formally declares war on another front for Israel. Now, the Yemeni group claimed to have launched a large number of ballistic missiles and drones towards Israel as the latter continues to escalate the attack on Gaza. In a televised statement, the Houthi group's military spokesperson Yahya Sarrier said that the operation was the third targeting of Israel, with more to come.
With the help of God, our armed forces have launched a large barrage of ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as a significant number of drones at various targets of the Israeli enemy in the occupied territories. The Yemeni armed forces affirm that this operation is the third in support of our oppressed brothers in Palestine. It affirms the continuation of carrying out more qualitative strikes with missiles and drones until the Israeli aggression ceases.
The Houthis see themselves as part of the axis of resistance, which includes Iranian-backed Shiite Muslim factions in Iraq and Lebanon's Hezbollah group. The Yemen rebel group is the third to launch an attack on Israel after Hamas's assault on the 7th of October and Hezbollah's sporadic airstrikes in support of the Gaza militant group.
Meanwhile, the gradual spillover of Israel's war with Hamas is worrying several West Asian nations now. Jordan has asked the US to send Patriot air defense systems to help protect the kingdom's border defenses.
And as Israel continues to ramp up its ground offensive in Gaza, Hamas has said that it will release a number of foreign captives in the coming days.
Well, the group plans to release some non-Israeli hostages out of the 240-odd people that they have been holding. That's a rough figure even now. In a video statement, the spokesperson of Hamas armed wing, Al-Qassam Brigade, says that the release had been arranged through mediation by some countries that he did not name.
He also did not reveal the number of captives or their nationalities, but said that the group no longer had the desire to keep them.
لقد تدخلت بعض الدول من خلال الوسطاء لتحرير بعض المحتجزين في غزة من الجنسيات الأجنبية، ووصلتنا طلبات هذه الدول، وبالتالي فإننا أبلغنا الوسطاء بأننا سنفرج عن عدد من الأجانب خلال الأيام القادمة، انسجاما مع موقفنا الذي أعلناه مبكرا عن عدم رغبتنا ولا حاجتنا للاحتفاظ بهم أو استمرار احتجازهم في غزة.
Now, the spokesperson also denied that a hostage freed by Israel had been in Hamas' hands, saying a number of captives were being held by other militant groups in Gaza. The statement came after Israel's military said an Israeli soldier, Ori Megiddish, was freed in Gaza during a ground operation.
עם ישראל היקר, אנחנו מודים לכולם על התפילות והתמיכה. אורי שלנו חזרה הביתה, ועכשיו התפילות עם שאר החטופים והנעדרים, וליבנו עם כל המשפחות. תודה לך בורא עולם, אין עוד מלבדך. תודה לשב"כ, תודה לצה"ל ולכוחות הביטחון. תודה לכולם, עם ישראל הוא עם לנצח. תודה לכולם, וסליחה שיצאתי רק עכשיו, וגם עכשיו זה מספיק.
Remember, Hamas has so far released 4 hostages, but this was the first successful rescue in weeks since the war began. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that recovering the hostages is an integral part of the military's goals, but he has rejected calls for a ceasefire. Meanwhile, the White House has said that a humanitarian pause could be of value in the effort to get the hostages out.
The goal would be to get aid in, to maybe get people out that want to evacuate. It also would be valuable, a humanitarian pause every now and then would be valuable for us if in fact there is a serious effort to get hostages out, because you'd need some kind of pause of the fighting to be able to do that safely.
Now, Qatar and Egypt have also continued with negotiation efforts, urging Israel to enable emergency aid deliveries. Qatari Prime Minister told Thailand's visiting foreign minister that efforts are ongoing to secure the release of hostages, including the 22 Thai nationals held by Hamas.
Meanwhile, families of Israeli hostages gathered in Tel Aviv carrying pictures of their loved ones. They say that they've been worried since the military stepped up the ground assault inside Gaza. Some even carried signs calling for a ceasefire.
The relatives of hostages also took to the streets of Paris, calling for the French government's help in securing their release.
They are a terror organization, and with terror organization you don't give and take. And the situation right now with the horrifying things they've done in Israel has to be, first of all, release all the hostages, and then everything else. I don't know what the Israeli authorities will decide, but I do know that we can't expect to negotiate with Hamas. And as far, it's not something that we know. We have no information about negotiation. And I do believe that the world shouldn't expect anything in return of bringing the hostages back home.
Now, an Israeli attack on the densely populated Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza has killed at least 50 people and injured so many more.
Now, the search operations are ongoing. The bombing had sparked outrage across the Arab world and beyond. South American nations, Chile and Colombia, have now recalled their ambassadors to Israel after the attacks on the Gaza Strip.
After Israel acknowledged it was behind the strike, South American nation Bolivia cut all diplomatic ties with Israel and has reiterated its support for Gaza.
According to Bolivia's ambassador to the United Nations, free Palestine is not just a cause of Palestinian people, but rather a question of global justice and peace.
En el marco de su posición principista de respeto a la vida, ha tomado la determinación de romper relaciones diplomáticas con el Estado de Israel en repudio y condena a la agresiva y desproporcionada ofensiva militar israelí que se realiza en la Franja de Gaza y la amenaza de la paz. y la seguridad internacionales.
Meanwhile, the US has said 66 aid trucks have crossed into Gaza, the most since deliveries from the Rafah crossing with Egypt began. However, fuel continues to be blocked. Now, in a social media post, US President Joe Biden has said, quote-unquote, many more humanitarian aid deliveries are needed in the Gaza Strip.
President Biden and his administration have refused to back the growing international calls for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, saying such a move would only benefit Hamas. Meanwhile, Scotland has condemned the Jabalia refugee camp attack. Scotland's First Minister, Hamza Yusuf, took to social media saying that this blatant disregard for human life must be condemned unequivocally. Yusuf expressed remorse that children and innocent men and women could not be saved in the refugee camp.
Meanwhile, a UN Palestinian Refugee Agency says Gaza aid distribution is struggling amid overcrowding and lack of fuel. As per the UN agency, distribution of food and medical supplies is faltering in Gaza due to choking of streets with rubble from Israeli shelling and overcrowding caused by displacement of civilians.
Look, we're facing huge challenges to our operation. First of all, the number of people who have sought shelter in under schools and facilities is 4 times more than what we had planned for in any worst scenarios, if you wish, right? So we are overwhelmed ourselves. Our own teams are overwhelmed and stretched, and they are themselves, many of them have become displaced. We have lost 67 colleagues to date.
Meanwhile, non-profit organization Medical Aid for Palestinians has called on the international community to broker a ceasefire in Gaza. According to MAP's chief executive Melanie Ward, Jabalia refugee camp attack marks a new low and should serve as a wake-up call to world leaders and politicians everywhere. And with that, it's time now for a short break on World DNA.
Don't go anywhere, lots more on the other side. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called on auditors to create an atmosphere where officials feel as if they are constantly being followed by shadows. We get you all the details.
Also on the other side, military synergy between India and Malaysia is at its peak. Indian Army 6 Rajput and Malaysian Army's 5 Royal Battalion have initiated Exercise Harimau Shakti 2023. All details on the other side. Do stay tuned.
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine, and the tensions that had been gathering steam over the course of the last several weeks and months.
The siren has gone off. I don't know if you can hear it in the background. what's going on. I'm going into the shelter now. So it's a very, very serious situation here across Israel. It's a state of emergency.
The United States stands with Israel.
Well, we are starting this broadcast with a developing story from West Asia, where Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Hamas has launched a war against the state of Israel.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
New drug is making a difference in the fight against Alzheimer's. This medicine helps slow down a patient's cognitive decline.
We look beyond the text. We give you context.
Is China preparing for a war in the Himalayas? And tonight, we come to you with some proof.
Hypocrisy is stunning.
Do leaders mean what they say? Do they ever say what they mean? To find out how real news affects you, your decisions.
Just when Iran took one step in the right direction, its moral police is planning to drag it further back. And once again, the victim will be women.
Watch Gravitas.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in.
We don't impose our views.
Did India threaten to ban Twitter? Either that or Jack Dorsey is lying to you.
That is Gravitas. We let life breathe through our show. Gravitas, the informed show for an intelligent audience.
Hello, welcome to This World. Vladimir Amelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that the world should be ruled by democracies.
I was interviewing you on television a couple of weeks back.
That's right.
And you said, if you really want to understand Jerusalem, why don't you come here and see it?
And you came.
Here I am. Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Why this cannot be fixed?
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population.
The problem here is Trump has been able to make the argument that this is a political prosecution and that he's being singled out unfairly.
Defend our nation. You are saying we could have a cure for cancer.
We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade, and they're going to come from India.
Downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos followed me on Twitter, and all kinds of crazy amounts of people have been contacting us.
The show where we get you the week's biggest stories from around this world. What is the India story? It's the story of the world's biggest democracy.
We are developing the road infrastructure. In the end of 24, it will be equivalent to the road infrastructure of USA.
We have now entered the growth phase. And I believe that the growth rate in India is going to be exponential.
Two narratives of Indian story which need to be brought center stage.
Every week, the India story will bring the most incisive analysis, the most authoritative voices.
India will be a significant pole in the universe of AI going forward.
India is walking tall, India's stature is different, India's voice is being heard.
And the biggest newsmakers.
This is just a start.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA. We've been tracking all the developments coming in from the Israel-Hamas war in the first half hour of the show. Of course, we've spoken about what Israel has carried out in Gaza. The latest has been there's been a strike on a refugee camp. Israel claims they killed one Hamas leader in that strike, but there were minimum 50 Palestinians who were also killed in that strike.
Meanwhile, Yemen too has now declared war on Israel. This as there were, of course, mounting fears of wider regional conflict in West Asia. We'll, of course, continue to bring you all the developments and track this very closely. But first, look at the headlines.
Yemen's Houthis launch a barrage of ballistic and winged missiles and large number of drones at multiple Israeli targets.
Bolivia's government breaks diplomatic ties with Israel, accusing the latter of committing crimes against humanity in its attacks on the Gaza Strip.
White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby says 66 aid trucks have entered Gaza in the last 24 hours and dozens more are expected to follow in the coming hours. Reiterates that no indication of Hamas diverting funds.
US President Joe Biden's support for Israel angers Arab American voters. New survey reveals 42% dip in Arab American support for Biden's re-election pitch.
Elite Kenyan police unit goes on trial on charges of wrongful death in killing of Pakistani journalist Arshad Sharif in Nairobi on the 23rd of October 2022.
Carlos Alcaraz's hopes to finish the year as the world #1 suffers a setback after opening round loss to Roman Safiullin in the Paris Masters.
In a surprising directive, Chinese President Xi Jinping has called on auditors to create an atmosphere where officials feel as if they are constantly being followed by shadows.
Now, this revelation came to light through a recently published speech in a well-known Chinese news magazine. Now, Xi Jinping made the directives at a speech that he delivered in May during a meeting with the Central Auditing Commission. And in his speech, Xi emphasized that the importance of auditors fulfilling their responsibilities and leaving no blind spots in their work, that was of the utmost importance. He urged auditors to closely monitor units managing public funds, state-owned assets and resources, and this to make sure that the party's policies are implemented as intended. Further, she highlighted 5 key policy areas for auditors to focus on.
Now, of course, these were finance, monetary policy, industry, technology and social affairs. He also stressed the need for auditors to pay attention to work that supports high-quality development, exercises power responsibly and maintains stability in employment and prices.
To strengthen the party's control over policies and their execution, President Xi established the Auditing Commission during his second term as president. Auditing, it's been an effective tool used by the Communist Party to crack down on corruption. Recently, in a separate incident, over 3,000 Hong Kong civil officials received disciplinary action for wrongdoing during the past 5 years. In response to this, the Secretary for Civil Servants has ruled out a proposal for flexible working hours and childcare leave, arguing that the Chinese government norms were more flexible in comparison to the norms of private companies. Now, military synergy between India and Malaysia is at its peak as a testament to growing defense cooperation between the two nations. Indian Army's 6 Rajput and Army's 5 Royal Battalion are beating the riggers in the dense jungle terrain in Shillong.
Now, both the armies have initiated Exercise Harimau Shakti 2023. This joint military drill covering the vast canvas of multi-domain operation is being conducted at India's Umroi cantonment. Both the battalions are blending in nature in the wild in the aim of achieving interoperability. These joint drills were initiated on the 23rd of October and will go on till the 5th of November. Both the contingents are put to the test with an emphasis on combat conditioning and jungle survival techniques.
Now, this joint training will conclude in a strenuous 48-hour validation exercise. It's tracked with computer screens where simulated insurgent groups fighting back. Harimau Shakti 4 command post exercise is planned on the mandate of Chapter 7 of the Peace Enforcement, which also involves every asset of the combat and combat support. This from infantry, artillery, engineers, signals as well as logistics.
Now, as Pakistan's November 1st deadline for the expulsion of undocumented migrants looms, there has been a surge in the return of Afghans, with thousands making their way across the border to the Taliban-ruled nation.
Now, this move, it sparked a mass exodus. It's tearing families apart and raised concerns about human rights violations as well. This as the deadline looms.
More than 10,000 Afghans rushed to the borders on Tuesday. Large numbers of migrants crammed into trucks and buses, headed to the Torkam and Chaman border crossing to return home. And according to Pakistani officials, both these border crossings with Afghanistan will remain open beyond their daily 4 p.m. closure to allow those who have arrived there to leave the country.
سالويخ کاله کېږي دلته پاکستان کې موږ پراته پاکستان کې موږ ته د خلکو موږ ته یوه قبولي را نه کړه ده چې یو کارت په ذریعه باندې دلته موږ وویسو چې خلک موږ تنګ نه کړي. اوس د تاسو کډې نه موږ راغلي د دې ځای معلومات هم چې دا کوم ځای دی خو دومره خبر یم چې د تورخم سره نزدیک دی او دا وګوره مختلف کډې دا ټول روان دي. څوک کابل ته روان دي، څوک جلال آباد ته روان دي، څوک کونړ ته روان دي. خو افسوس په دې خبر راځي چې خیر تاسو به موږ ته یو کال ټایم راکړو، موږ به په یو کال کې زموږ کاروبارونه سامانونه اردان ریټونه موږ نه لاړل. ولې چې موږ مجبور افغانستان کې جمع را روان دي، په جمع کې افغانستان کې کارونه مارونه نشته دي.
کراچي کې زما خپل کاروبار پریمیج دوی په سندیان هم پیسې باندې پاتې شورانه بټریانو په کې خرڅ کړی کرا میکړه باندې رالم هر څه رانه ضبط کړ په چر واغستلو مخکې نیولم وسینولم دا وسې دا یو ورځ مخکې راتلو 4000 روپۍ رانه واخستلې هر یو نس پیسې جناخلي بيخي حالات خراب.
Now, after the deadline expires, the Pakistan government will start arresting undocumented Afghans and taking them to new holding centers where they will be processed before being forcibly returned to Afghanistan. The deadline is part of a new anti-migrant crackdown that targets all undocumented or unregistered foreigners, according to Islamabad. But it mostly affects Afghans, who make up the bulk of migrants in Pakistan. And according to Pakistan's Interior Ministry, the country is home to more than 4 million Afghan migrants and refugees, and about 1.7 million of them are undocumented.
1st November एक डेडलाइन थी इलीगल एलियंस के लिए, दैट इज टुमारो. कल तक उनके वॉलंटियर रिटर्न का डेट है और फ्रॉम 2nd ऑनवर्ड हमारा ज़ाहिर है ये बड़ा लेंथी ग्रेजुअल ऑपरेशन जो है वो स्टार्ट होने जा.
Islamabad had announced the plan earlier this month, saying Afghan nationals had been behind tax, smuggling and other crimes in its territory. Although since the accusations made by Pakistan, Kabul has dismissed it, saying Pakistani security is a domestic issue. While rights groups are protesting against Islamabad's move, asking Pakistan to reconsider. In addition to that, Western embassies and the United Nations have urged Pakistan to identify and protect Afghans at the risk of prosecution at home. It also added that Pakistan must meet its international legal obligations, including the principle of non-refoulement, and stop the crackdown against and harassment of Afghan refugees across the country.
On to news now from the world of business. Our next report puts the spotlight on China's pandemic recovery.
While China has been providing support to its economy through policy measures, the recovery in manufacturing activity has just failed to take off. But is the world ready for a world where China's business activity is in contraction territory? Is there a possible alternative to China as the dragon struggles to find steam? Take a look at this next report to find out.
China's economic challenges are mounting as its manufacturing activity unexpectedly contracted in October. The official Purchasing Managers Index fell to 49.5 in October from 50.2, dipping back below the 50-point level. Demarcating contraction from expansion, it missed a forecast of 50.2 and was worse than the most pessimistic prediction of 49.9 by Reuters poll. This decline underscores the formidable task facing Chinese policymakers as they grapple with a slew of domestic and global challenges. While recent indicators had hinted at a stabilizing economy, thanks to policy support measures, a prolonged property crisis and weak global demand continue to cast a shadow over China's prospects. China's housing slump and a slowdown in infrastructure spending are contributing to this economic downturn. Weak demand, particularly from overseas, is causing manufacturers to struggle to find buyers and reduce orders for components used in finished goods for re-export. This in turn is eroding business profits and causing factory gate prices to contract sharply. In the midst of this economic struggle, there's a growing sense that China's impressive growth story may be stagnating. Meanwhile, an alternative economic powerhouse is emerging on the horizon. India, with its youthful population, entrepreneurial spirit, and a government committed to economic reforms, is positioned to offer a faster and more dynamic alternative. As China grapples with stagnation, India's economy is poised to seize the opportunity to shine. While China may require more policy support to meet its annual GDP target, India's economic potential is becoming increasingly evident. Its diverse economy, burgeoning tech industry, and growing middle class make it a compelling alternative for investors and businesses looking to capitalize on Asia's growth story. As China's economic challenges persist, India could emerge as the unexpected frontrunner, setting the stage for a new economic era in the region. Bureau Report WION, World is One. Nvidia, the AI giant, is feeling the pressure as its stocks take a nosedive.
The shares of Nvidia Corp have plummeted nearly 5% to their lowest point in almost 5 months. The reason? Reports suggest that the company may be forced to cancel up to $5 billion worth of advanced chip orders to China, and all due to new US government restrictions.
Nvidia was recently informed that AI chip orders scheduled for delivery in the next year to major Chinese firms such as Alibaba Group, ByteDance and Baidu now fall under the latest export restrictions mandated by the United States Commerce Department. This has now put a considerable strain on the company, causing its stock price to plummet 4.7%.
The situation is driven by the Biden administration's decision to impose export restrictions on the shipment of AI chips, including those designed by Nvidia, to China. These restrictions aim to curb the transfer of cutting-edge US technology to bolster China's military capabilities. Now, the new export controls are scheduled to take effect in November, and they extend to other nations, including Iran and Russia.
For now, Nvidia maintains that these export controls would not significantly impact its operations in the near term, though its stock continues to face substantial volatility.
All right, over to all that is happening in the tech sector. Did you know that cybercrime will cost companies worldwide an estimated $10.5 trillion annually by 2025?
Well, the United States is the worst hit. That's about 46% of the share that's reported incidents of cyber attacks this year. And a coalition of government cybersecurity leaders from 40 countries, which of course includes the United States, have formed an alliance now to put an end to such ransomware attacks in the future.
Now, 40 countries in a US-led alliance plan to sign a pledge. Countries who sign the pledge will commit to never paying ransom to cyber criminals and to work towards eliminating the hackers' funding mechanism. The alliance is part of the International Counter-Ransomware Initiative. The new initiative by the alliance aims to eliminate the criminals' funding by sharing information about ransom payment accounts. In ransomware attacks, hackers encrypt an organization's systems and demand ransom payments in exchange for unlocking them thereafter. Hackers often steal sensitive data and use it to extort from victims and leak their data online. If the payments are not made, it's pretty much clear blackmail.
So how does the alliance work? Two information sharing platforms will be created, one by Lithuania and another jointly by Israel and the UAE. Partner countries will have to share a blacklist through the US Department of Treasury that will include information on digital wallets being used to move ransomware payments. Now, the US Deputy National Security Advisor in the Biden administration for cyber and emerging technologies said that the alliance will use artificial intelligence to analyze blockchain to identify illicit funds.
Meanwhile, the volume of crypto payments to ransomware attackers is on track for its second biggest annual total on record. This, according to blockchain analytics firm Chainalysis.
On to news now from the world of sport. Pakistan break a 4-match losing streak at the ICC ODI World Cup. The 1992 champions thrashed Bangladesh by 7 wickets at the iconic Eden Gardens in Kolkata to keep their semi-final hopes alive.
It was about time that they won a match. They've already lost a number of them. While it's curtains for the Bangla Tigers in this edition, Pakistan, of course, have got that much-needed break. Bangladesh themselves entered the clash on the back of a 5-match losing streak. They won the toss and elected to bat first, but they soon found themselves under the cosh. Now, Pakistani pacer Shaheen Afridi dismissed Tanzir Hassan for a duck in the first over itself, becoming the third fastest bowler ever to reach 100 ODI wickets. Bangladesh was struggling at 23 for 3 already when Liton Das and Mahmudullah put up a crucial 79-run stand. Now, Liton Das fell for 45 while Mahmudullah completed his half-century before being dismissed for 56. Bangladesh skipper Shakib Al Hasan scored 43 as the Tigers got past the 200-run mark, but Mohammad Wasim Jr. claimed 3 wickets in his last 7 deliveries to bundle out Bangladesh, all for 204.
Fakhar Zaman, who came in place of Imamul Haq, opened with Abdullah Shafiq, and the duo took on Bangladesh bowlers and scored 52 in the first 10 overs. Shafiq brought up his 4th 50 of World Cup in the 17th over and a ball after Zaman reached his half-century with a spectacular 6. Mehdi Hassan Miraz broke the 128-run stand by dismissing Shafiq for 68. Babar Azam gifted his wicket, but Zaman continued his onslaught. He smashed 7 sixes but fell short of his 100 and was out for 81. Mohammad Rizwan and Iftikhar Ahmed completed the formalities and took Pakistan home in the 33rd over. All right, over now to what's making news in the world of entertainment.
Matthew Perry's memoir titled Friends, Lovers and the Big Terrible Thing returned to the top spot amongst most sold books on Amazon bestsellers. The actor published his memoir on November 1st, 2022. In his book, Perry opened up about his struggles with addiction among other things. His demise has left a deep void in the hearts and minds of his fans who are mourning his loss across the world. Meanwhile, Grammy Award-winning singer Billie Eilish continues to provide that she is a champion of sustainable fashion. The 21-year-old singer partnered with Gucci, debuting the luxury fashion house's premier Demetra product, reflecting the house's aim toward a more ethical fashion future. The Hospit 1955 bag will sell at $3,500 in black Demetra. Prior to this, Nike partnered with Billie Eilish on a collection of sustainable sneakers. The singer even joined hands with H&M on a sustainable merchandise collection. Billie was also named in PETA's Person of the Year in 2021.
No, mommy, what I give Mama is easy.
Which is you want, Priska?
I won't make my people be happy.
After picking up several awards at this year's Sundance Film Festival, Nigeria's Mamiwata has been submitted to the Academy, hoping it will be entered for a foreign language Oscar. Shot entirely in black and white, The pidgin language film is an exploration and creative reimagination of the mythology of the titular mermaid deity of West African folklore.
And with that, we call it a wrap on this edition of World DNA.
We're going to slip into a short break after this, but come right back. News and updates continue on the other side.
India's global voice.
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine, and the tensions that had been gathering steam over the course of the last several weeks and months.
The siren has gone off. I don't know if you can hear in the background what's going on. I'm going into the shelter now. So it's a very, very serious situation here across Israel. It's a state of emergency.
The United States stands with Israel.
Well, we are starting this broadcast with a developing story from West Asia, where Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Hamas has launched a war against the state of Israel.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
A new drug is making a difference in the fight against Alzheimer's. This medicine helps slow down a patient's cognitive decline.
We look beyond the text. We give you context.
Is China preparing for a war in the Himalayas? And tonight, we come to you with some proof.
Hypocrisy is stunning.
Do leaders mean what they say? Do they ever say what they mean? To find out how real news affects you, your decisions.
Just when Iran took one step in the right direction, its moral police is planning to drag it further back. And once again, the victim will be women.
Watch Gravitas.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in.
We don't impose our views.
Did India threaten to ban Twitter? Either that or Jack Dorsey is lying to you.
That is Gravitas. We let life breathe through our show. Gravitas, the informed show for an intelligent audience.
Hello, welcome to This World. Vladimir Amelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that the world should be ruled by democracies.